Hi guys, I'm back with my new YouTube video on this chapter from CBSE Political Science 12th class NCRT, which is called India's External Relations. So, while we're trying to do this chapter, we have to understand that there are a lot of contexts and backgrounds we will have to go through to understand this whole situation that India was having and how was its bilateral relations, how was its in relations with different countries at the global level. So, first of all, we will begin with that India was born in a situation where there was a lot of challenging international context. We all know that India got independent in 1947, where the world already had like two camps, the US one and the USSR one. So one was the NATO forces, one were the USSR camps. By it was there was the world was having a situation of bipolarity, what we can term it as. So, and already the world had witnessed a devastating war. A Second World War had already happened, and the world was grappling with issues of reconstruction. So, you know that a lot of countries were getting independent, some were demanding for independence, and there was attempts to establish international body. UN was going to happen, and a lot of developments were taking place when India came into existence, when it got its independence from the Britishers. So all these factors they tend to make a impact on India's foreign policy when it got independent. So Free India's foreign policy reflected all these concerns in the period immediately, which was after independence. And apart these factors at the global level, India had its own share of concerns. So, uh, India, it already, had a lot of years when people were dominating India, like Britishers were ruling India, Mughals had invaded India, so India wanted to be independent now, independent in all senses. So it did not want to be aligned with any of the camps when it got independent. There was this feeling with India that if it got attached to any of the camps, their, it would hamper the independence of India. So basically, this independence which India had got from a lot of struggle, they didn't want to just give it away to any of those camps, either the US one nor the USSR one. Well, India was really good friends with USSR, but as we know till now as well. But it still did not want to align with any of those, just to keep it itself independent from all the matters and be in a non-aligned state. As we know that the bipolarity is much easier to understand than non-alignment, but here we will understand what non-alignment means and how it all came into existence. So, in the backdrop of the World War, now India decided to conduct its foreign relations with an aim to respect the sovereignty of all other nations and to achieve security through the maintenance of peace. So, India was an advocate of peace and it did not support war. So, therefore, this aim also finds an echo in the DPSP. So, when just as both internal and external factors, they guide the behavior of an individual or family. So, all these factors guided India's foreign policy, the foreign policy of a budding nation, which was coming into existence in this era where there were two camps, and India wanted to decide that what it should do in this situation. Obviously, there would have been confusion in the leaders' minds as well, but they definitely chose path which was a median path, which was a middle path, and it helped India to grow independently in this matter. Uh, Understand the policy of non-alignment and how far did India practice non-alignment and to what extent it could possibly do non-alignment in international affairs. So, Indian national movement was not an isolated process, as we know. It was a part of the worldwide struggle against colonialism and imperialism. So, as we know that India wasn't the only country who had been colonized, so it had support from other parts of the world as well in its struggle. It also influenced the liberation movements of many Asian and African countries. Prior to India's independence, there were contracts between the nationalist leaders of India and those of other colonies, as they were in the common struggle against colonialism. Then we know about the creation of Indian National Army by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose during the Second World War, and it was the clearest manifestation of the linkages established between India and overseas Indians during the freedom struggle. The foreign policy of a nation reflects the interplay of domestic and external factors. So, this statement itself is very important and can be asked as a question. So, foreign policy of a nation reflects the interplay of domestic and external factor itself means what is an interplay? Interplay means this connection of the domestic and external factors. So India as a country had its own domestic situations, problems happening, and external factors which are happening outside the country. We might think that they are not having any impact, but they have a significant impact over a country's policies, its relation with other countries, and how they're going to have a trade, how they're going to manage their policies with each other. So therefore, these noble ideals that inspired India's struggle for freedom, they also influenced the making of its foreign policy. Now, India's attainment of independence coincided with the beginning of the Cold War era. So, as I told you that there were two of these camps. Two of these camps, they had a Cold War situation with each other. Today we are going to cover this introduction part only, that how are these situations, we're making the backdrop of India's external relations. And we know about world politics as well, that this period was marked by the political, economic, and military confrontation at the global level between the two blocks or two camps, we can say, led by the superpowers, the US and the USSR. The same period also witnessed developments like the establishment of the UN, the creation of nuclear weapons, the emergence of communist China, and the beginning of decolonization. So India's leadership had to pursue its national interests with the prevailing international context. Now, as we begin to understand Nehru's role into this, as Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India, so he played a crucial role in setting the agenda, and also he was the most interested in the foreign policy, and he was his and as this is said, that he was his own foreign minister. He was a charismatic personality who represented India at the global level, and people respected Nehru so much. And Nehru had laid the foundation of an independent India, which we are living in right now. Thus, both as a prime minister and as a foreign minister, he exercised profound influence in the formulation and implementation of a foreign policy. That's why he's called his own foreign minister. And from the period from 46 to 64, he was doing his duty as a prime minister and as a foreign minister as well. The three he was not the actual foreign minister, but he took interest so much in this field of foreign policy and the external relations. That is why he is called as his own foreign minister. The three major objectives that we are going to cover today of Nehru's foreign policy were to preserve the hard earned sovereignty. Nehru just didn't want to give India's sovereignty away to any of these camps. That is why he chose this path of non alignment, which we will understand in the next video, and to protect the territorial integrity of India. He knew that how difficult it was to make India, how difficult it was to protect the pieces of India which the struggle of the freedom that all these leaders had fought had collected. And he wanted to promote rapid economic development. This beginning of a nation, this making of a nation, India as an economic power that we're living in now, that India is going towards this developed stage. Nehru had laid the foundation of this India, and where he wanted to promote rapid economic development. That is why he did not want to have any external influence on any of the policies, and he wanted to protect India from all the foreign decision making that could be possible. This was a way that the strategy of non-alignment could be achieved. There were also, of course, parties and groups in the country that believed that India should be more friendly with the bloc that led by the US, because that bloc claimed to be pro-democracy, and India is the largest democracy, and some groups thought that. Among those who thought on these lines were leaders like Dr. Ambedkar. Some political parties which are opposed to communism also wanted India to follow a pro-US foreign policy. These included the Bharatiya Jan Sangh and later the Swatantra Party, but Nehru possessed considerable leeway in formulating the foreign policy. So now Nehru's role was this, that even after a lot of people uh, who were supporting this pro-US idea that India should be aligned to the US bloc, but Nehru made his own decision that India should be non-aligned. And Nehru didn't want that the in that India's policy should be, entangled with more of the external relations, external politics. He wanted that India should have its own way. India should establish its own path, and non-aligned way was a better way to establish this. So in the next video, we will understand the distance from two camps, the and we will understand how non-aligned movement it was founded with all the five countries that came together. And that's all for today's video. And thank you so much for listening today.